Thank you all for coming. It's not every day that I'm in the same green room as Michael Douglas. He really envied my acting skills, so. Thank you all for coming. I'm here to talk about my book, my memoir, Uncensored, which I had the awesome opportunity to write as a junior in college. So I went to Williams College in 2014. I got there as a freshman, determined to gain a deeper understanding of humanity. I was very interested in political subjects, social, economic issues, foreign policy, you name it. Everything that you read about in editorials in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the Washington Post, I was interested in. And one thing I was really intent on doing was trying to broaden and deepen my perspective by exploring perspectives and experiences that I was less familiar with. I had grown up in a family of progressive Democrats. I identified as a Democrat. And yet, it was my belief that if I wanted to be ready, prepared, equipped to go out into the world and make a positive difference in the lives of others, I had to try to gain a better understanding of the nuances and the complexities and the shades of gray with respect to issues like health care and welfare and Social Security and economic policy. And so when I got to Williams, I said, you know what? I am in this incredible community of intellectual inquirers who are contributing to new knowledge, who are talking with one another, who are asking probing questions, great questions. And there was this thing called tutorial courses. You have two students and one professor, and for me, I thought that this was the idyllic intellectual experience. Why? Because you get to talk a lot and listen a lot and ask a lot of questions, and you get to go in detail, in depth. One thing that's great about Williams is you've got a lot of individualized attention, and students are able to build relationships with their professors because you only have 2,300 students, and that was important to me. Broadly speaking, these tutorial courses were dreaded by some, avoided by others, and generally less popular. So what did I do? I took 8 in my first 2 years, as many as I possibly could, and I loved it. There was a lot of reading and a lot of writing. Every week, one person, one student, one of the two would have what was called a primary paper, 7 to 8 pages. And then the other student would write a response paper. So the night before you meet with your professor, the other student would receive the primary paper and write a 3-page response. And I just loved it. I loved the intellectual depth and the intensity of it. And it was something singular about my experience at Williams that was phenomenal. Yet, one thing I noticed early on was that when it came to the hot button issues, when we were talking about race and gender and class, when we were reading texts that explored economic inequality, there were certain things, certain subjects where people tiptoed around them. They treaded carefully. They avoided saying what they really believed. Conviction felt less welcome. Strong opinions felt less welcome. And I could sense this, and so I started thinking to myself, as someone who really cares deeply about my education, about having robust and open discussions, what can I do to improve this, to change this for the better? One thing I realized is that it can be very difficult to change an entire community that you're a part of. But what you can do is change the interactions that you have within that community. And so that is what I focused on. Now, this is going to sound a little crazy, but this is true of who I am. For a good, I'd say 3 to 4 months, the dining hall opens at like 5 p.m., closes at around 8:30. Most students, you go in 30, 40 minutes, you eat, you leave. I'd get there like 4:55. Have dinner with someone who was there at 5, talk with them for 20, 30 minutes, and then move to another table. I'd already eaten, so I'd sit down and join another group of people and talk to them for 20, 30 minutes. Then when they left, I would do this over and over, and I would be at the dining hall from 5 to 8:30 when it opened until it closed, as if I were not taking all of these tutorial courses, as if I were not doing all of these other things. And I was really determined to try to connect with my peers, to build relationships, to really have substantive, detailed, focused discussions on the issues of the day. And sometimes that means you just start out with the light stuff, with things you have in common, with similar experiences. Sometimes it means you ask people questions that will tell you more about them. Because one thing I've realized is that when it comes to the big issues, the issues that really motivate people, that determine how people vote, oftentimes we all have sacred beliefs and we all feel strongly about things. And when we have these conversations, we lead with our convictions. We lead with our own understanding. We lead with, so here are the 3 reasons why I'm right. 1, 2, 3, boom. And the effect that it can have when you lead with a question, when you say, I'm really interested in this, but healthcare is complicated. I don't understand enough. I want to understand more, and I'm sure when I leave Williams, there's going to be a lot more for me to understand. What do you think? How has your experience informed your understanding of the issue? How has it affected your parents and what they do? How has it affected your life? Leading with questions, turning answers into observations. It enabled me to disarm interactions that would otherwise be very conflictual, adversarial, very combative, because these are sensitive subjects. So this was my approach. Let's have tough conversations, and let's try to have them in a responsible way, in a careful way. Let's try to pay attention to others' sensitivities. Let's try to be aware of our own. I think it sounds like a decent approach. And I anticipated some challenges, but there were more than I anticipated. There was a group on campus called Uncomfortable Learning. The name just appealed to me. I liked it. It sounded like something I should be a part of. The mission of the group was to broaden the range of political discourse on campus. Now, what that really meant was Williams was predominantly liberal. I'd say probably 70% of the student body voted for, liked, and admired Hillary Clinton. I was one of those people. But you had 30%, some who were further to the left, and a smaller percentage that identified as conservative and libertarian or independent. And those students felt less comfortable voicing their views, expressing their opinions. And so that was a part of what attracted me to Uncomfortable Learning. A Harvard law professor's name is Randall Kennedy. I admire him greatly for his approach to tough subjects. He wrote a book titled The N-Word, The Strange Career of a Troublesome Word. And in it, he talks about how offensive speech affects public discourse. He talks about the history of the N-word itself. He talks about how the word itself has led to any number of conflicts in many situations. His view is that we have the individual license, insofar as we are not threatening anyone else, to speak freely. However, he believes that we should try to be judicious, that we should try to be tactful, that we should think about potential repercussions and consequences for our actions, for our decisions, and for what we say. So Randall Kennedy was at Williams. It was October. It was my freshman year. He was speaking there about his book. There were students who were protesting. There were students who got up and walked out. I was sitting right there in the front row, listening very closely, paying attention to his every word choice. I had reread several of his books in the week leading up to his talk, and I found some tensions. And so I asked him at the end if he could reconcile 2 statements he'd made, one in a book that he wrote early in his career and another that he'd written most recently. He answered the question fully, thoroughly, carefully, in standard fashion. And afterwards, the then president of Uncomfortable Learning approached me and said, "Zach Wood, you should be a part of this organization. We want you to be a part of this group." I was like, hey, you don't need to do any convincing. So I join and I start helping the club advertise for events. I said, okay, so what are we really trying to do here? They said, we want to tackle the tough subjects, right? So they said, let's start with feminism, then let's move to racism, then let's move to climate change. I said, okay, this is going to be some controversial stuff. This is going to be tough. And I wanted to make waves. I wanted to make a positive difference. I wanted to do it in a way that would better prepare me for challenges that I would face later in life. And so I leaned into it. I said, let's do this. Invited one speaker to campus, invited another speaker to campus. There were disinvitations. There was backlash from the student body. There were students who felt that inviting speakers who were Trump supporters made them feel less welcome on campus. They didn't feel included. They didn't feel like they could contribute in class anymore. They felt attacked. They felt offended. They felt that bringing speakers like Charles Murray, who wrote The Bell Curve in 1994, detracted from their ability to make the most of their education. And that is exactly the opposite of what I was trying to do. My goal was to strengthen, to improve upon, to enhance the ability of myself and my peers to make the most of our education, to push our intellectual limits, to ask questions that we weren't thinking about, to interrogate subjects that were complicated, that were contentious. And so I had to think, okay, how am I going to deal with this? Now I'm in hot water. There were protests against uncomfortable learning. There were articles written against uncomfortable learning. I was starting to gain national media attention because free speech on college campuses is a big deal these days, especially with Donald Trump on the rise. And I would say openly, personally, as someone who identifies as a progressive Democrat, his ascendance it's disturbing for me. But that doesn't mean I don't want to hear what people have to say who find that his message resonates, who support him, who agree with him. I'm not willing to say that everyone who supports him is this or that, or it can be explained in one simple way. And so I had to pause and take a step back and say, Uncomfortable Learning is a group that I joined when I got to Williams, but this is just the further evolution of a journey of uncomfortable learning throughout my life. I grew up with a mother who had schizoaffective disorder, and that's essentially a combination of symptoms of bipolar and schizophrenia. My mom was extremely brilliant, incredible soft skills. She was a people person. She had a deep understanding of people. Yet, more often than not, her brilliance lost the battle with her mental illness. And when that happened, her rage was terrifying. And so as a kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, any child, you want to have a positive relationship with your mom, a nurturing, encouraging relationship, one where there's positive reinforcement, where your mom makes you feel more confident and makes you feel empowered and encouraged. And my mom loved me deeply. She loved me dearly, but it wasn't that simple. And so I had to be patient. I had to be very alert. I can remember nights where she would yell for hours, and I had to stand up straight and look her in the eye the entire time and just take it. And I remember going to sleep just not really wanting to wake up the next day. This is at 5, at 6. I didn't even know what schizophrenia was then. I'd wake up the next day and I'd have to really pay close attention and read the signs. Is today going to be a good day or a bad day? Is she going to be upset? Is she going to be happy? Is she going to be sad? The good days were great days. When because a part of the illness is that you have mood swings, so your mood fluctuates. On good days, she wanted to go to the arcade. She let me take a day off school. I was like, oh, wow. I didn't know what hooky was until my mom told me. But this is what she was like. On good days, we'd go to the arcade, we'd go to Chuck E. Cheese, and what 7-year-old doesn't want to do this? Then we'd go out to eat, and we'd get ice cream, and we'd go see movies, then we'd rent more movies, then we'd come home. I wished every day was like that then, but it wasn't. And so I had to pay close attention to her. Had to detect from her body language, from subtler cues, what was today going to be like, and what could I do as her son to be there for her. At a time when kids are really just thinking about what they want to do, I had to think, okay, I want to avoid my mother's rage. I want to have a positive, affirming, encouraging, uplifting relationship with my mom. And so I've got to try to connect. That is a part of why I'm here today. That's a large part of why I wrote this book. That's a large part of why, when I got to Williams, I was wired in such a way that having difficult conversations with people that I deeply disagreed with was the kind of challenge that I wanted to take on, was something that I wanted to work through. On her better days, my mom had as much wisdom as anyone I have ever met. So in 4th grade, I asked a lot of questions as a kid, a lot of why and how questions. And at the time I was attending a public school in Detroit. It was under-resourced, it was underfunded. Teachers faced challenges and had very limited resources. Some of the challenges they couldn't even deal with themselves. Students coming to school having worn the same clothes for 2 weeks, having not eaten the night before. How can you focus as a student under those circumstances? And here's Zach Wood asking all these questions about this thing he read the other day, and we were reading Moby Dick at the time, an abridged version. I had all these questions about stuff that I'd read online and book reviews and other articles. And the teacher wrote in my progress report that Zach was being disruptive in class because he was asking too many questions. And this is really a testament to who my mom is. She saw that and she took it very seriously. She said, you know what, you should be able to ask questions. Your curiosity should be encouraged. You should be encouraged to take on different intellectual challenges, to broaden your horizons. And so she went and she spoke to my teacher, and within the next 2 weeks, she transferred me from that Detroit public school to the Grosse Pointe Academy, which was an elite private school in a suburb just outside of Detroit. And she said, you know what, there are going to be significant differences between you and your peers. My peers over spring break and winter break were traveling to Aspen. I had never been to Aspen. I thought it was in another part of the world. Going to Beijing and China, going to Hong Kong, taking tours of Europe. I had never been out of the country. And so she said, there will be significant differences. What does every kid want? You want to belong. You want to fit in. You want to make friends. You want to be liked. Who doesn't want to be liked? Especially in 4th grade, you're going to a new school. And she said, you've got to be patient. You've got to be alert. You have to acknowledge that there are differences. Yourself, you've got to accept that there are differences, but that's okay. Our differences make us interesting. Our differences, it's a part of our individuality. It's a part of creativity. Our differences are it's a part of humanity, but at the same time, what we have in common matters more. And so she said, in your efforts to connect with your peers, in your efforts to connect with your teachers, to be the best student that you can be, ask questions. Ask people questions that will tell you more about them and their experiences. I'll never forget, there was a kid in my class. His name was Will Scarfone. He thought when I got to Grosse Pointe Academy that the main reason why I was there was for sports. And I was really bothered by this. I was there because I liked reading and writing and speaking. I wanted to be a great student. And I went home and I told my mom this, and she said, you know what? There are stereotypes, there are assumptions. We all make assumptions. A part of the reason why stereotypes exist, and she explained this to me, is not because people have bad intentions. It's because the world is a very complicated place, and in order to understand it, we have to make a lot of judgments very quickly. And there is an abundance of research in social psychology and social science that shows, within a minute of meeting someone, seeing someone, observing someone, we've made any number of judgments. Do we like this person? Can we trust this person? Do they seem competent? Is this someone we want to work with? And she said, it's not bad that our brains work that way. It's a part of how we survive. She said, the key is to try to be aware of it, to try to be self-reflective, to pay attention to the judgments that you're making about people, and to question those assumptions, to question those judgments. I can remember recently, I was on a flight to LA. I was at the gate waiting to board. Sitting there, what does everyone do when you're waiting at the gate these days? You're on your phone. And I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and I'm just scrolling through, reading this editorial. And peripheral vision, I see out of the corner of my eye to my left an older gentleman sitting there, minding his own business. And he's got his phone out. And I saw, a picture of a guy in a red hat that said, "Make America Great Again," with his thumbs up like this. It was Donald Trump. Immediately, all of these assumptions, all of these preconceived notions about Trump and Trump supporters just starts flooding through my mind. He must think this on immigration. He must not like this person. He must be against gender equality. He must be on and on and on. And I had to pause and stop myself and say, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to practice what I've been preaching, which is that we should try to have conversations with people we disagree with. F. Scott Fitzgerald, it's the first page of The Great Gatsby, the second paragraph. Nick Carraway says that my father said that reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I said, this is my chance to, because I believe that. This is my chance to put it in practice, to walk the talk. So I said, you know what, let me try to have a conversation. So I reach out, I say, sir, I hope you don't mind me asking. I extend my hand, my name is Zach. Nice to meet you. I hope you don't mind me asking, why do you support the president? And to my surprise, we had a very pleasant conversation. And we disagreed on all manner of things. He was not a fan of Hillary Clinton. I think she's the most qualified person to ever run for any elected office ever. But what I did find by the end of our conversation was that there were very important things, important values that we had in common despite the very different backgrounds we had. 3 values in particular. One was family, the other was service, and the third was hard work. 3 things that are really at the core. I mean, these are, Samuel Huntington is a conservative political scientist who writes about the American creed. And the idea is that there are certain values, certain fundamental beliefs at the core that really define what it means to be an American. Because America is a nation of immigrants, Huntington is essentially saying that there are a belief in the rule of law, a belief in democracy, a belief in the value of dissent, that these things truly unify us. And while I disagree with Huntington on some things, I believe he's certainly right about that. And this experience at the airport that day, it affirmed that for me. It made me say yes, even when I don't think it's possible, when it seems challenging, or unlikely. There are meaningful things that I can find in common with people of a different generation, of a different background, of a different race, of different religious beliefs. And I have been very fortunate in traveling and speaking about my book to have had conversations with many people of different backgrounds and different walks of life that affirmed for me the value of stepping outside of my own comfort zone. I mean, now here we are in 2020 in the midst of an election year. Our country is deeply divided over the issues of the day. It's my belief that in order for us to continue to make meaningful progress, I believe we've been stymied for a bit since 2016, but in order for us to continue to make progress, to continue being the greatest democracy on earth, I think we've got to find a way to come together. I think we have to find a way to focus on our common humanity, a way to acknowledge our differences and embrace our differences. One of my favorite essayists, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in an essay called Experience, says, "The true romance the world exists to realize is the transformation of genius into practical power." And when I think about what that really means, I think it's about taking these really complex issues, these really complicated topics, like healthcare, like our tax system, which I think is overly complicated, and making it more tangible, bringing it down to the mood on the ground, the experiences of everyday people who are trying to start small businesses in rural communities, single mothers who are trying to raise children on their own, Americans who are working hard to achieve the American dream but need help, who need opportunity. I think we are stronger when we work together. I think we're better off when we come together in cooperation for mutual enlightenment. And I've got to acknowledge Kobe Bryant, who passed recently, who's one of my favorite athletes, and I write about him in my book. And one thing that has been especially relevant for me over the past, I'd say 4 or 5 years, has been persistence. I think he was one of the most persistent competitors, athletes out there. And one thing that his legacy has really taught me is the value of really not being afraid to make a great effort. You may come up short sometimes, but it's worth making the effort. This is a guy who structured his entire life around being the very best basketball player that he could be, and he was a pretty good one. But this uncomfortable learning stuff, though I like it, is not easy. And so when I reflect on his career and his example, through challenges, through mistakes, through triumphs, this was someone who was always willing to go the extra mile. I write in my book, his coach, Phil Jackson, said that if the bar was set at a 7, he was going to raise it to an 8 and then a 9. Always pushing himself to be better. And so every difficult interaction I have, every tough conversation I have, I'm trying to connect and I'm trying to gain a deeper understanding, and I am also asking myself, what can I learn and take with me from this conversation, from this experience, that I can use later to be a better leader, to be a better communicator, to be a better human being? I think there is hope. I think, as Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe does bend toward justice, but I think we have to fight for it. I think we have to be persistent. I think we have to remember some of the founding creeds and founding principles that really undergird the American dream and what America is really about. So as I rounded out my experience at Williams as the president of Uncomfortable Learning, I walked away with a few takeaways, concrete takeaways, because I think those are always important. One, everyone wants to be seen and everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be validated. It's a part of being a human being. And so when we find ourselves in difficult situations, in situations where we deeply disagree, whether it's in a room with many people or in a conversation with one person, I think we should try to make the effort to make sure that the person that we're talking to or the people we're speaking to feel seen and feel heard and feel validated. Second, I think there's value in trying to find things that we can genuinely affirm in others. Who doesn't appreciate having their strengths genuinely affirmed? We're all good at something. None of us are good at everything. I can't score 81 points in one game like Kobe did. But if we can affirm each other's strengths, if we can ask people the kinds of questions that give us a sense of what's really important to them, if we can affirm the effort that someone is making to be better, to do better, to make a positive contribution, it can really make a difference. And the final thing, for me, this never fails. Gratitude. In many interactions that I had, the conversation would go here and it would go there, and I would feel like I was making progress at one point, and then another point I would feel like there were significant tensions, and how would I get around this? And ultimately, at the end, I would reach a point where I would say, thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting down with me. Thank you for doing this with me. Is there something, a podcast, a book, a novel, that you've read, that you've learned from, that you think I should read, that you think I should check out, that I should listen to? And then that gave me an opportunity to genuinely thank this person, to express gratitude for them sharing something that is of value to them, that has informed their perspective with me. I think if we do those things, we have a brighter future. We have a better tomorrow. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions you all have about what I've said, what's in the book, what's in the news, what's on your mind. Yes?
What was the toughest moment in Uncomfortable Learning at Williams?
Good question. The toughest moment for me was right after I had invited a speaker. His name was John Derbyshire. He was a conservative writer at the National Review, a publication I often disagree with, but that I respect immensely, and that I read specifically for the purpose of gaining a better understanding of opposing views. I had invited him to campus, and my college president swiftly, unilaterally disinvited him. And that was significant because the leader in any situation, anytime the leader of an organization, of a group, in this case, my university, makes a decision like that, it sends a message. And I understood this is not going to help build support for uncomfortable learning. This is not going to make my experience at Williams any easier. Now that he has disinvited the speaker, I have to justify why I invited the speaker. That was one of the implications. If the college president has disinvited the speaker, why did I invite the speaker? Why am I doing this? Furthermore, going forward, how is this group, this organization, going to continue thriving? Because a disinvitation doesn't really convey much support from your administration, and I was only a student. And so I had to think long and hard about how I was going to defend my own position and acknowledge the challenges that he faced as the president of the institution. He's thinking about bad press. He's thinking about protests getting out of control. He's thinking about having students and parents and donors who are calling him saying, you know what, students don't feel welcome because certain views are being expressed, certain speakers are being invited. And I was thinking about all of these different dynamics and how I could move forward and make my case as persuasively as possible. The main thing I learned was that the best way to make my case as persuasively as possible was not to approach people with the direct first intent of trying to make my case, but just asking them what was their view on the matter. What were the aspects they were most concerned about? Was it security risks? Was it students feeling welcome, included, sense of belonging? Was it press? Was it their opposition to the views themselves? Leading with questions. When you lead with questions, you give other people an opportunity to share their views and their experiences with you. It goes back to making sure that people feel seen and heard and validated. We don't get anywhere, not in Congress, we're not really getting anywhere right now. We don't get anywhere in our lives more broadly when across differences, it's only, combativeness and competition. Good versus evil, wrong versus right. That is not to say that there is never a time and place in which you should say this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do. It's often very important to say that. But what I learned is that I had to lead with questions first and really convey that what I was ultimately after was gaining a better understanding, not just in winning or not just in having my way, but in gaining a better understanding. And so even after the speaker was disinvited, I said, okay, what have I learned from this? And I used it the next time and fortunately was able to have a number of successful events afterwards. Yes?
So you were at Williams for 4 years and you were part of this organization. It seemed to be, in listening to your book, that you were able to convince several individuals to change their attitudes towards conflict and discussion and what's okay to discuss. But do you feel like you made a systemic change at Williams? Or was it just, can you only affect the people that you communicate with, or is there at some tipping point at which the system then changes?
Great question. First thing I would say is that it depends upon the community. It depends upon the college campus. Yes. So the question was, she said that she read the book and she noticed that I changed the opinions of a number of people, a few people that I spoke with individually. And so the question was, can you also achieve systemic change, or can you only really achieve change at an individual level? And it's an important question. And there isn't a simple answer. The first thing I would say is that it depends upon the context. What is the university? What's the environment like? What is the composition in terms of the diversity? What is the leadership? What are the values? How large is the university? I was at Columbia for a year, and all kinds of things that would be a big deal at Williams. At Columbia, it's like, hey, we're in the middle of New York City. You've got thousands of students on campus. Uncomfortable learning happens all the time when you live in New York City. If you just go outside, right? So it's very different. So the context matters. With respect to my experience, I would say my college president resigned at one point, and the tension between free expression and inclusion on campus was a factor in his resignation. It was not the only reason, but it was a factor. That's a significant change. There were other systemic changes that my inviting speakers prompted. For instance, by the time I became a junior, I could no longer invite speakers without going through the administration first. Now, that change was not a favorable one for me because the administration was opposed to uncomfortable learning, by and large. And so some systemic changes happened, and I didn't want them to happen, but they happened. Often, I've noticed that if you're trying to change the practices more broadly of an institution, it takes time. And as a student, you've only got 4 years. And so while I was focused on trying to change the community and the practices of the community, I eventually resolved that I had to focus even more on what I had more control over, which was how I myself engaged with people. How did I engage with my peers? How did I manage the Q&A between speakers and students and speakers and professors? How did I advocate for uncomfortable learning? And so I tried to take it a step further. I tried to be persistent. I tried to do what Kobe did and go the extra mile. And so what did that mean? I wrote a lot of op-eds. I bet my college president dreaded every time I wrote an op-ed because it's press and I'm writing about uncomfortable learning. And when he disinvited the speaker, I wrote a response. When I testified before the Senate, a senator, Joe Kennedy from Louisiana, asked me a number of questions. And the general tenor of the questions was that he disagreed with my college president. A few months pass, my college president writes an article in the Washington Post responding. I wrote something in response to the Wall Street Journal. So these were ways in which this continued and extended and kept going. And it was really good because it was really a battle between ideas. What is the purpose of a university? Are we just pursuing goals of social justice and equality? As a society, I think we should pursue greater equality. But one essential function of a university is the pursuit of truth, the creation of new knowledge, the contributions to new knowledge. If that isn't first and foremost, we're in trouble. And so I learned from all of it. Yes?
I believe your book finished when you were a senior at college, or maybe you had just graduated.
Yes, junior. Yep, yeah.
You were junior. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Before you graduated.
Yep.
My question, I'm just curious. What have you done since you graduated?
Well, my acting career, Michael Douglas, has been very... No, I've had the awesome fortune of being able to travel and talk about my book. In April of my senior year, I gave a TED Talk, which was probably the greatest experience of my young life. To be on stage and to look out in the audience and see Steven Spielberg sitting here, and to look over a little bit and see Paul Allen, this was just before he passed, to look over to my left and see Al Gore, where else is that going to happen? And to be around so many people who are interested in ideas, creative thinkers who are interested in making a positive difference, it was incredible. And so since I've graduated, I've done a lot of speaking and a lot of writing, and I was a curator at TED for a while, which gave me an opportunity to work with speakers and to seek out speakers, people who really shape public opinion, who inform the way we think about issues of the day. It was an incredible experience for me. I was also an editor at The Guardian for a while, which was an interesting opportunity for me to apply some of these principles with respect to uncomfortable learning to journalism. Being in a newsroom where, you've got 10 things that happened the day before that are newsworthy, but you can only write editorials on 4 or 5, what's going to be covered, and what will the stances be? We know that all major papers have an editorial stance. Some lean left, some lean right. Part of the challenge for me, The Guardian is a paper that leans left, a little more to the left than I am. Part of the challenge was advocating strategically, as effectively as I could, for having a greater diversity of views in the opinion pages. So this variety of experiences has given me an opportunity since I graduated to really try to put uncomfortable learning in practice in my everyday life. Yes, in the back.
Have you ever had to experience the BDS or the anti-BDS movements?
Good question. Just before I got involved with uncomfortable learning, we invited Norman Finkelstein to campus. Norman Finkelstein and Alan Dershowitz are 2 intellectuals who have, it's one of the most prominent and vociferous disagreements when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I myself did not have to confront that when I was prepared to and I wanted to, but once certain restrictions were imposed, the number of speakers I could invite was limited. And so I ended up covering race and climate change and gender and didn't get to that. But I've definitely seen it play out on a number of college campuses. And I think it stands as another example of how I think administrations have to take a step forward in terms of setting the tone and framing these issues better. Part of the big challenge, I think, is that things aren't framed properly so often. If a controversial speaker is being invited to campus, it goes a long way if the college president sends out an email, an all-school email, or makes a statement saying, this is going to be difficult, this is going to be challenging. It's not easy for me, I don't expect it to be easy for you. This is why I believe it is worth it. This is why I believe it can be a valuable learning experience. This is why I believe we should make a presumption in favor of free and robust discussion. And so I think the examples with BDS movements have underscored the importance of doing that on all campuses. Yes?
Is there any short answer you give to someone who would say, it makes me uncomfortable, assuming it really does make the person uncomfortable?
Short answer, it makes me uncomfortable too. I have never expected that everyone was going to want to do this. I have never expected that everyone was going to be interested in uncomfortable learning, or that everyone was going to be interested in having a conversation with someone they really disagreed with. My hope is that for those students who are curious and who want to be engaged, that we provide the opportunity for them to do it. My hope is that for people who feel less inclined, that they might consider one day stepping outside of their comfort zone and pushing themselves just a bit further.
Is uncomfortable learning still there at Williams?
Technically, yes, but really, no. And the main reason why is because as the president of Uncomfortable Learning, you're going to be in hot water. And when the water gets too hot, people they want to get out. And I'm not there anymore. And it can be a tough position to be in at a school that is so small, in which so many of the personal interactions you have, everyone knows you. So the club is not in a particularly vibrant or flourishing position at the moment. Yes.
Your principles
Last
sound very powerful for in-person interaction. How do they work in anonymous online?
You said my. Say that again?
Your principles
Oh, yes, in anonymous platforms.
conversation.
Great
How does it work online with anonymous trolls?
Great question. So, yes, so his question is, my principles he says they sound good for person-to-person interactions. How do we apply them in a world where social media dominates so much of the public sphere? I think we've got to try to be thoughtful. If I wanted to tweet something right now, I could do it in 10 seconds. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be cogent or persuasive or sensitive or tactile. I can just tweet it. I think part of what we should try to do is, and this is tough and I don't expect people to do this, but if we approach social media in the same way that we would approach writing a paper or in the same way we'd approach writing a handwritten letter, I think we're just going to be more likely to catch certain errors in judgment, to rethink certain things. One thing that social media does is it makes it very easy for us to mobilize bias. I think we have to actively try to resist some of our impulses in our use of social media. We just have to try to be thoughtful, and we've got to try to be tactful, and we've got to try to think things through. We need to go. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions right out there. Thank you.